Hi, everyone. I thought we would have a little conversation today about Catholic communion and specifically First Communion. And I I have my gloves here with me today. It's a little cold and it's good to have your gloves at communion. If you know, you know. This video is a continuation and a little bit of switching gears from the last few videos that I've put out. This video was inspired by my vision quest, and I'm going to actually tell you about my first communion experience, the first communion service that I attended last year. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about just the larger concept related to Catholic communion, communion in general with Source. And I had the idea for this video partially to switch gears back into more of a conversation related to the integration of different spiritual lineages and wisdom and understanding that concept of communion with the Holy Spirit, with with Source. And then, as I had the idea for this video, because I'm doing an archive on my website right now of my vision quest. So you're going to be able to find a lot of photos and information about what I've been experiencing over the last couple of years, and specifically the journey that took me to England in 2024, and then the journey that took me to New Mexico in early 2025. And so I had this idea to just chat about my first communion experience, which was super fun and super cute. And I'm excited to share it. But then because I've recently been engaging this topic related to the larger cult of Baal, Epstein network, that led me down the path of seeing all of Meghan Markle's deceptions and lies and doing shamanic forensics work around that. You may have seen the Meghan Markle Dossier video that was published. So we have a fun little synchronicity here, and I'm holding these gloves for a reason and having fun with it. And as I had the idea for this video, I saw in the news that Meghan was attending a communion for a child in Chicago. You can put your gloves away. It's okay. Well, we'll just put them away. We'll put those gloves away. So let's talk about communion and have some fun with it. So I'm actually wearing a bracelet. This is a first communion bracelet that I got at a monastery here in New Mexico recently to commemorate the experience that I had last year around Easter. So I got to Taos in early 2025 after feeling this sense of being guided and knowing that I needed to come to New Mexico, knowing that I had shamanic work to do, knowing that I had healing work to do here, knowing that I wanted to connect with the art scene. My grandmother was an artist, and she followed in the footsteps of Georgia O'Keeffe and painted a lot of the same locations that Georgia painted. And so I had a number of reasons for coming to New Mexico, but that led me to Taos. And 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 my life really has been a spiritual vision quest. I live my life in a way that feels like communion with nature, with Source, with universal intelligence, and I let that guide me, and I have fun with it. And so in early 2025 in Taos, I was having all of these experiences of feeling these little downloads or pings to go to different places. And then I would have these spiritual experiences. I would have really deep experiences sometimes. I'm a person that feels the past really deeply. And I time travel in my consciousness quite a bit. And so I'll have experiences of the past, I'll have experiences of the future. And so my shamanic world now is kind of this fluid experience of that. And so I'd already been doing quite a bit of that sort of integration work and vision questing work as I got to Taos last year. And I'd had interest in visiting a lot of different temple spaces. sanctuaries, sacred spaces, and I've wanted to connect with a lot of different spiritual lineages on my path, on my journey, wherever I happen to be in the world. And so I'd been doing that a bit in Taos, but there's a church in Rancho de Taos, which is a little neighboring community outside of Taos that's fairly famous. It's been painted by a lot of the artists that go to Taos, and it's the St. Francis Church. It's dedicated to the St. Francis lineage of Christianity, the Franciscan lineage. And so one day on a Friday, I was just feeling this strong pull to go to this church, and I wasn't exactly sure why that specific timing, but it just felt right. And I just decided, let me get in the car and go down there and spend some time there because I hadn't visited yet. And so I get there and I'm expecting to have this peaceful, quiet experience. Most of the churches and sanctuaries I've popped into on my path, I'm usually there at times when it's not like a formal service. And so I'm just doing my own thing and being in silence and honoring the space and honoring the lineage and receiving whatever insights and spiritual nourishment, healing, guidance wants to come through and wants to show itself in whatever way. And so I get to this church, the St. Francis Church in Rancho de Taos, and I also was in such a flow with my shamanic vision quest that I wasn't even really paying attention to the dates around this time. I knew Easter was coming up, but I was kind of like oblivious to the dates. I get there, and I think this was on Good Friday, maybe. And there's a big group of people, a lot of kids and parents, and there's someone standing by the entrance to the church. So I just walk up to them and I say, is there an event happening? Like, is it okay for me to go in? And this person said, oh, it's the kids' first communion. They're going to get started in a little bit, but yeah, like you can go in. And so all of a sudden I thought, oh, wow, what a fascinating synchronicity, coincidence. It's not a coincidence. We know coincidences aren't a thing. And so I go in and I'm just having my own experience at first, just kind of connecting with the space and just kind of feeling, this particular lineage and whatever wanted to come through. This was also around the time of the passing of the Pope Franciscus, and so there, it felt like there was some, sort of energetic connection that was also kind of being made, related to that. So I'm there, and all of a sudden the group of kids and parents and those who are participating in coordinating the service, they start getting the service going. They start getting the communion procession going. And I'm pretty sure in the past I have partaken in communion of the wafer and juice at a Catholic church, but I actually had never been to a first communion that is like a typical first communion service. Like most children, when they're getting initiated into Catholicism, they go through a first communion rite of passage. It's a formal ceremony that they go through to connect with Christ consciousness, to commune with that intelligence of Christ. And so all of a sudden, I'm sitting here and I'm having my first communion experience with all of these kids, and it's adorable. And so all of these kids are starting to do their procession, and I just decide to stay because I'm already there and I'm having a beautiful spiritual experience, and I'm feeling this joy for the kids, even though I'm a person who has wanted to be of all lineages. I don't subscribe to one or the other. And I have opinions, thoughts about a lot of them and just little distortions, that have come to pass and developed through our dark ages. That happens. It happens in all of these different organizations, lineages. And part of my path has been examining all of them and taking what resonates from all of them to build what feels really true to me, and honoring, honoring the evolution of all of these different lineages for what they are, as lineages of light, as lineages that are meant to carry the Christ light, because not just Christianity is that. And there's actually a new page on the website dedicated to what I'm calling grail keepers, wisdom keepers of all lineages. And it describes my journey of finding the Christ light in all lineages and recognizing that pure love of source that is coming through all spiritual lineages on the planet. And everyone just has their own approach and way and rituals and sometimes dogma, and yet underneath all of that is source. Underneath all of that is the path of love that we're all attempting to embody and find our way to. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting through this first communion and I'm just having so much fun watching these kids and also watching their parents be proud of them. And and because I've also been aware of some of the violations in the Catholic Church, we're all aware of those violations in the Catholic Church, the violence that has happened towards children. I actually had a particular interest in what the Catholic priest was going to say in his address. Like, what was the vibe? What was the vibe of this communion? And how would that land for kids? Like, how are kids being brought into this lineage in a way that is healthy for them or not? And so I was really interested in what that experience was going to be. And I think there's aspects of Christianity, some aspects that have gotten a little fear-based, in the preaching, in the delivery of the word. And the word is not meant to be a fear-based thing. The word is not meant to put us in fear. The word is meant to liberate us. And so all of a sudden, I'm watching this priest start his portion of the service and leading the kids through this talk, through the sermon. And he did such a good job. And I just want to really appreciate the lineage of Catholicism and all of the Christian lineage in New Mexico. I think it's been a really beautiful experience for me to connect with the integration of mysticism. There's a lot of mysticism, Christian mysticism, which feels more Gnostic, feels more like the Gnostic Christianity to me than some of the, kind of larger organizations of Christianity that exist in especially the United States today. And so I first want to just appreciate the New Mexico Christian lineages and say that I've found so much beautiful inspiration and healing because of you. Thank you. Thank you for how you have woven the foundational understandings and teachings of Christ into the mystic enchantment of communion with nature, because that mystical kind of enchantment of indigenous wisdom is so alive and well here in New Mexico. You can feel that. You can feel that in the Christian churches. And obviously Christianity was in some ways forcefully introduced to New Mexico. So there've been, hundreds of years now of this weaving of lineages, and you can feel that and see that, and it shows up in different ways. And it's to me, a really interesting way of engaging with Christianity as well. And so this priest did a really beautiful job of helping these kids understand that the path of Christ is not about fear, and it's about being truthful and being honest and forgiveness. And this priest was doing such a good job of just outlining some of those foundational concepts of how we can be loving people and open people and truthful people and the ways we can correct ourselves, when we've had a mistake or when we've found ourselves not operating in love. And And that was really healing for me to hear. It was kind of this inner child healing that was happening for me at this first communion by seeing this priest meet these children in a way that was really healthy and would help them start to integrate into Christianity in a way that's not fear-based, and in a way that's also not about putting responsibility or power outside of themselves, but taking that responsibility for themselves. And so it was just such a fun and beautiful and cute experience. And so that was my first experience with that particular church, and that was my first formal communion. And so I want to thank all of the kids who were there last year. Thank you. If any of you ever find this in the future, we'll consider that a miracle. And we'll be able to celebrate the first communion that we had together. So as I was there, I was blessing their path forward and their destinies and their ability to also carry the Christ light and Christ truth of source, the love of source, with them, and expand, to even expand beyond that one particular lineage, because I think that sort of expansion is so healthy and important for us. We don't have to stay in one box and think of other lineages or spiritual traditions as separate. I like to think of them as all interconnected now and all weaving together now and sharing, wisdom and insights with each other. And and that's what I've been having fun with on my shamanic path, is that sort of weaving and that sort of integration of truth inside of me, and reconnection and unifying of wisdom and cultures. And so the other day, I found a monastery in the southeastern part of Santa Fe, kind of in, I think, the Pecos area. And so this first communion bracelet was there, and I thought it would be just such a fun little way to commemorate the occasion, because it's made, for children. So I now have my my kid-like first communion bracelet to wear. And I thought I would also just describe a little bit of my thoughts around the ritual of communion in Catholicism. While I believe this ritual to be, in many ways, for many people, of pure intent to connect with the intelligence that is Christ consciousness, that is source consciousness, that can move through us, that was moving through Jesus. It's that sort of concept to me, that we are, unifying the spirit and the material, right? We're bringing the spirit into the material. That's kind of what the wafer and the liquid indicate, right? So the wafer indicating material, the liquid indicating flow and spirit. And yet, in Catholicism, we have had some distortion that has developed in prior centuries over the last couple thousand years. And that's when Catholicism really developed, right? Like over the last 1500 years ish. And so we had what was the beginning of Christianity attempting to teach the way of Christ, teach the actual lived experience of Christ. Then that morphed into these organizations that held a lot of dogma and control and power over congregations. And that's not what Jesus was about. Jesus was not about there being a lot of intermediaries between you and source, between you and God. Jesus was not about creating these dogmatic structures that keep people feeling fearful or separate from. And so we've had an evolution that in some ways has not always served us, but also it is beautiful to have some aspect of ritual and rites of passage in life. That's a shamanic teaching, that rites of passage are healthy for us and help our brain repattern into a new experience, or help us let go of a past experience. So ritual can be a beautiful thing. It can be very helpful, very sacred in many ways. And sometimes it can be used in ways that are inverted or darker. And I'm aware of the fact that we have had some infiltration of antichrist satanic sorts of ways of operating in the Catholic Church throughout time. The whole Catholic Church is not that, but there have been parts that have succumbed to some darkness or have gotten a little twisted in our understanding of what true communion looks like. And so I want to preface what I'm going to say next with I've done communion, and a lot of people have, and most people are holding pure loving intention for connection with Christ and wanting to be like Christ and wanting to carry that love of source with them and through them in this world. And at the same time, the whole idea of the wafer symbolizing the body of Christ and the wine or juice symbolizing the blood of Christ being offered to people to ingest, and when it is literally said that we are ingesting the body and blood of Christ, that's kind of cannibalistic. Like, that's literally an introduction of cannibalism into the Christian church. And there are certain aspects of the Christian church that have been deceptive, that have in some ways sought to continue subjugating the idea of Christ rather than allowing all people to live like Christ. And so again, I want to say that, for people who've engaged in the eating of the wafer and the drinking of the juice, and you've had pure intentions and you're like, oh my God, like I never would have thought about it that way. Like, yeah, totally. Like, source gets that. And it's all good. Like, most people like have pure intentions when they're doing it, but also we don't have to ingest the body and blood of Christ. We don't have to go through a ritual like that to have communion. We don't have to go through that sort of ritual to actually feel the presence of Christ or source. And so I've taken the path of not doing that anymore because it just kind of doesn't feel like I need to. And it also feels a little weird now, knowing what I know about Satanism in this world, and knowing what I know about how Satanism in all these different ways in the shadows has snuck in to different organizations and has infiltrated and has kind of twisted or inverted practices. And back then, if we're being honest about what was going on back then, most of the organized institutions were against Christ, right? Because Christ was showing a path of liberation. Christ was attempting to wake people up to the truth of what was going on in some of those institutions, saying, hey, these institutions are really not serving your best interest, and they're really not actually helping you connect with the one true source. Like, we've got some misunderstandings here, and they're really trying to like assert control and power, and that's not good, for like the general population of people. Like, Jesus was attempting to share that message, and so a lot of these institutions, and it was more the so-called Jewish ones in Israel at the time, were very much against Jesus, right? Like, they were very much against this being who was embodying a different way, and who was also showing that you actually don't need an institution like that to help you become holy. You don't need to go to a priest to become holy, because you already are, and you already are God, and you already are in communion with God. And it is simply about allowing ourselves to embody more of source presence and source virtues. And at the same time, on this planet, we've been so confused about that. And we've been so confused about authority, and we've been so confused about who's in charge and who knows what. And we've been in fear. We've been in fear about, if we don't do certain practices, then are we going to, go to hell? Are we going to be left behind? Like, whatever that fear has been, that has developed in us, we can let that go, because ultimately what has happened is somewhat of an inversion in these institutions. And what I think has happened is that post Christ, we had Christian institutions that were like murdering people, like doing straight up satanic stuff. to basically create structures of power and control that would prevent the actual true lived experience of Christ being known by all. And that's really unfortunate. And so I think what happened here with the Catholic communion is some of that. It was actually this attempt at subjugating Christ, right? Because that's what happened back in Israel. It was an attempt at subjugating this being who was here to liberate humanity and to show what liberation looked like, to show what source intelligence through a human at its highest power and capacity looks like. And so once that being was gone, well, the institutions certainly needed to make sure that didn't happen again, right? So all of a sudden we start developing these ritualistic sorts of ways of engaging with Christ. And I actually think that we had some bad apples at one point in the very early Catholic Church that thought of that as a cannibalistic subjugation of Christ sort of activity. Again, it has not lived on in that sort of way for all aspects of Catholicism. Again, most people are approaching that with pure intentions, and it's not a big deal. But also, I think it's healthy and important for us to have these sorts of conversations about, like, where did these rituals come from? And also, we now know, like, we actually have a cannibalism problem on this planet. We actually have a satanic cannibalism problem on this planet, and it's pretty weird and it's pretty crazy. And that's accidentally shown up in some ways in various spiritual traditions. We've been walking this line between like antichrist behavior and Christ behavior. And so I just want to offer this also as an invitation to say, like, we can move beyond, rituals that don't resonate with us anymore. And we can keep them if they still do. And we can just rewire and reprogram how we relate to them. Right. So we can dissolve any old programming or intentions related to communion that maybe was more about the subjugation of Christ. And we can allow that to just live as a practice that helps us become open to the merging of spirit and material, to allowing the Christ spirit to move through us in material ways that are beautiful. And so I think that's, the more Christ consciousness version of communion. And I think we've had some other other intentions going on there too at times. And so it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing to think about how, like, antichrist behavior has shown up in Catholic churches. So interesting. Such an interesting thing. So anyway, we've had a lot of deception on this planet, and that's even shown up in some of our spiritual traditions, where those who are holding the power haven't wanted the general population to have access to the full knowledge, the full wisdom, the full memory of Christ. And what's beautiful now is that by, again, connecting outside of one particular lineage, while keeping that lineage close to our heart and honoring it for the beauty it has brought to us and the healing it has brought to us, we can then source from a lot of other lineages and wisdom and history that help us start to expand into more of that full expression of Christ, which is joyful expression of life and creative expression of life, and allowing the abundance of the Holy Spirit to move through us and as us for the good of all. And so Christ didn't perform miracles and allow for that miraculous multiplication and manifestation of good to happen by hiding behind authority figures, right? Like, that didn't happen. Christ was embodying the authority of source and allowing that to occur. And so it's been an interesting experience for me to move into a place of really contemplating that, like, where have certain traditions carried forth incredible healing and word of source through humans, through our orated history and written history on earth. Where have these lineages all preserved beautiful truth and beautiful words of healing and embodied love that we can remember and experience? But also, where have they left things out, and where have we been subjugated into a more diminished or limited experience of life? So I want to thank all of the kiddos at the communion last year for supporting my integration of this, because this has been a year-long integration of exploring a lot of different aspects of Christianity. I've spent a lot of time in shamanic study and following the path of a lot of indigenous wisdom over the years, and dabbling, in Christianity. But this last year was a little bit of a deeper dive for me, and gave me an opportunity to connect in a different way here in New Mexico. And I'm very grateful for that, and grateful also for the way New Mexico has very much represented saintly culture and the Santos culture, and I want to appreciate and celebrate the creativity of artists who bring forth the Holy Spirit and the intelligence of saints through them, because I think that's such an important aspect of carrying the Christ light, is to allow that creative expression and that expression of source through us in whatever way feels right and in whatever way feels of service. And that's showing up in a really incredible, beautiful way in New Mexico. So I want to bless our communion with source, with the mother of creation that Mary represented. I want to bless our ability to expand beyond any boxes we've found ourselves in. I want to bless our ability to carry with us all of the beautiful aspects of spiritual and religious tradition on this planet, while allowing curiosity and openness and exploration to come back to us, knowing that what was written down 2,000 years ago during dark times can evolve. Our understanding of that can evolve. And that's a beautiful thing. Evolution and the evolution of consciousness and the evolution of our capacity for love is a beautiful thing. And that's very Christ-like. So what isn't Christ-like is feeling like we have to stay in a box, or that we have to follow one particular set of dogma. What is very Christ-like is allowing a more fluid and organic intelligence of source to guide us and help us connect with that wisdom in a lot of different places. And so that's been a beautiful part of my journey that I want to share, and that I'm excited to continue integrating, because I have found a lot of unity in myself through that experience of being willing to connect a lot of different lineages in my heart, and finding the commonalities and celebrating the differences, and finding different truths in each one that I needed to put together as part of the larger, like, spiritual puzzle for my life. And so I just want to bless that communion, because I have found the Christ light in a lot of different spiritual lineages, and every single one I've connected with. And I think that's a beautiful way of following in Christ's footsteps, is to allow ourselves to go beyond, whatever religion or tradition we found ourselves originally aligned with, and to seek that communion in all places, because source is in all places, and source is in all of us, and that Christ light can come through all of us. And so I've had a fun journey with the concept of communion over this last year, and just integrating all of these mixed emotions, that I've had about different aspects of spirituality and religion on earth. I think when we do start to explore and navigate different corners of our spiritual archives on earth, we can start to feel a lot of different feelings about a lot of different things that have developed in this world, or ways of operating that have developed in this world. And I think there have been times I've had some anger, and frustration with Christianity, especially the Catholic sect, for some of the satanic activity that's occurred there. Uh, and so I bless our ability to move beyond that and rise above that and correct that across the board, and to return our spiritual lineages to what they're really intended to be, which is about our freedom and about our liberation and about our ability to heal ourselves and heal all of those parts of ourselves that have felt limited, less than, fearful, unworthy, unloved. We've got so many different wounds and traumas that we're healing from as humanity, and ultimately, the path of communion with source, with each other, with a lot of different traditions and support systems, helps us heal all of those little parts of ourselves that have been connected to all of these different aspects of human life. So we can think of our soul as this, multifaceted thing. We are multifaceted, and so it's like I have found a part of my soul in Peru. I've found a part of my soul in India. I have found a part of my soul in England. I have found a part of my soul in New Mexico. I've found a part of my soul in Christianity. I have found a part of my soul in Buddhism. I have found a part of my soul in Japan. I have found parts of me, parts of us, in all of these different places. And that weaving can be such a fun, beautiful experience. And that is communion. That is an experience of communion also. So there's a lot of different ways we can think about communion. And so I wanted this to be a gentle follow-up to some of the previous videos that were a little more antichrist focused. Again, if you know, you know. And and to just honor that experience of communion for all of us. So thank you for this communion that we're having here as you're listening to this. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your journey that you're on, and your openness and your curiosity and your willingness to source God, light, truth, love in a lot of different places, because that's ultimately what is going to reunify us on this planet. So blessings for continued communion in the highest way, in the most loving way that allows us to feel that sense of connection and unity and pure love flowing through us and between us. Okay. Bye for now.